"Well, bless her heart," I muttered, stirring my Earl Grey with a silver spoon. The scent of bergamot hung in the humid Atlanta air, almost masking the exhaust fumes from Brenda's brand spanking new Lexus pulling into the driveway. A Lexus. Honey, my Jerry was barely cold in the ground and she's driving a Lexus? The audacity. She hopped out, all smiles and sunshine, like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Turquoise sundress, designer sunglasses perched on her head. She looked like she'd stepped straight out of a Talbot's catalog. And that smile. Wide, bright, fake as a $3 bill. You know the kind, sweetie. The one that doesn't reach the eyes. "Helen, how are you doing?" she chirped, already halfway up the porch steps. "Just peachy, Brenda," I replied, managing a tight smile of my own. "Admiring your, new ride?" I let the word new hang in the air, thick as the Georgia humidity. She giggled, a high-pitched, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, this old thing. I just traded in my Corolla. It was time for an upgrade, you know. Safety features, you know how it is." Safety features? Bullshit. Jerry's life insurance policy had safety features, and they were paying for that damn Lexus. I gestured to the porch swing. "Come, sit. I made some tea." She settled into the swing, careful not to wrinkle her precious dress. "Oh, tea, how lovely. You know, I've been thinking a lot about you lately, especially about everything." "Everything?" I echoed, raising a skeptical eyebrow. I took a slow sip of my tea, watching her over the rim of my china cup. The whole scene felt staged, like a poorly written play. Brenda shifted in the swing, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "Yes, everything. You know, the house, the finances, all of it. It must be so overwhelming for you." "Overwhelming? At 72? Honey, I balanced the books for Parker & Sons Construction for 40 years. I think I can handle a little estate management." I said it sweetly, but I wanted to slap her. I knew what she was after. She thought I was some doddering old fool, easily manipulated. She thought she could sweet-talk me into signing over Jerry's inheritance. That's when I casually pointed across the street. "Lord, look at Jerry again," I said, my voice laced with mock exasperation. Brenda's eyes followed my gaze. "Jerry?" "Jerry Miller, the neighbor. He's out there puttering around in his garden again. He's retired, bless his heart. Retired and utterly nosy. Spends half his day watching everything that goes on in this neighborhood. Thinks he's the sheriff of Maybury. Always fiddling with his plants, snipping and pruning. He's got those little metal tags on every single one, all neatly labeled. He even has a little notebook he carries around to jot down when he fertilizes them. Can you imagine?" I added, adding a light chuckle. "It's cute, in a pathetic sort of way." I continued, "He probably knows more about my comings and goings than I do myself. He saw the moving van when Jerry and I first moved in, saw the pizza delivery guy last night, saw you pull up in that lovely Lexus. He sees everything, that one. It's his hobby. Keeps him busy, I suppose. Keeps him out of trouble." I sighed dramatically. "He even knows what kind of fertilizer I use on my azaleas. The busybody." Brenda looked visibly uncomfortable, her eyes darting back and forth between me and the aforementioned Jerry, who was, indeed, as usual, bent over his rose bushes. He waved, grinning, and I returned the wave with what I hoped looked like genuine neighborly affection. I knew Jerry wasn't really watching everything. I only said it to unsettle Brenda. I turned back to Brenda, my smile as saccharine as the artificial sweetener she probably used in her coffee. So, sweetie, about those finances. What exactly is it that you're so concerned about? I knew damn well what she was concerned about. She wanted her grubby little hands on Jerry's money. She thought she could play me like a fiddle. She was wrong. I took another sip of my tea, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. The cicadas buzzed in the trees, the sound amplified in the stillness. Jerry across the street kept pruning, oblivious to the drama unfolding on my porch. Brenda finally cleared her throat. "Well, Helen," she began, her voice a little too sweet, a little too careful. "I just want to make sure you're being taken care of. You know, you're getting older. These things can be, complicated." Complicated? Oh, honey, you have no idea how complicated things can get. I watched her carefully, my eyes narrowed. I knew she was lying. I could smell it on her, like cheap perfume. What was she really after? "Complicated?" I repeated, my voice dangerously soft. "Oh, honey, you have no idea how complicated things can get." I watched her carefully, my eyes narrowed. I knew she was lying. I could smell it on her, like cheap perfume. What was she really after? "Well," Brenda continued, shifting in her seat, her voice taking on that practiced, sympathetic tone I loathed. "It's just that, well, managing finances can be a lot for someone." She paused, giving me that look, that condescending look. "Your age, all the paperwork, the investments, it can be overwhelming. Lord, give me strength." "Overwhelming?" I chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Sweetie, I balanced ledgers before you were even a twinkle in your daddy's eye. Back in my day, we didn't have fancy computers doing everything for us. We used our brains and a good old-fashioned adding machine. And a checkbook, remember those?" I paused for effect, tapping my fingers on the porch railing. "Besides, Jerry left everything pretty straightforward. Social Security comes in like clockwork, little something from my retirement, nothing fancy, but it pays the bills." Brenda's smile tightened just a fraction. "But Helen, there's so much more you could be doing. Investments, long-term care, things you need to think about. I just want to make sure you're protected. What if something happened?" "Something happens to everyone eventually, Brenda," I said, leaning back in my rocking chair. "That's why I have life insurance and a will, all very clearly laid out. My son, Mark, knows all about it. You know, your husband?" She waved a dismissive hand. Mark is busy. He doesn't have the time to manage all that, but I do. I could handle everything for you, Helen, efficiently, professionally. I could get you a power of attorney. It would just make things so much easier." Power of attorney? Bullshit. That's what this was all about. I feigned a confused frown. Power of attorney? What exactly does that mean, dear? I can never keep these things straight. I started patting my chest, like I was searching for something. "Oh, where are my reading glasses? I swear I had them just a minute ago. You know, at my age, things just disappear. I put them down and poof, gone. Now, where were we? Oh yes, power of attorney. Is that like giving you permission to drive my car?" I batted my eyelashes, playing the doddering old woman to the hilt. Brenda's face was a mask of barely concealed impatience. "No, Helen, it's not like that at all. It means I would be able to make financial decisions for you, pay your bills, manage your investments, things like that. All for your benefit, of course." "Oh," I said, drawing the word out slowly. Well, that sounds complicated. All those forms. I haven't even managed to figure out how to work that Zelle thing Mark was trying to show me. You know, for sending money. Back in my day, we wrote checks or used cash. Now it's all digital. I shook my head, sighing dramatically. I guess I am getting to be an old fossil. It's not complicated at all, Helen, Brenda insisted, her voice rising a notch. I can handle everything. You wouldn't have to lift a finger. I could even set up automatic payments for all your bills. No more stamps or running to the post office. I narrowed my eyes again, watching her. She was really pushing it. The nerve of this woman sitting on my porch trying to weasel her way into my finances. You know, Brenda, I actually have been trying to get with the times. Jerry, you know, from across the street, he's been so helpful. He came over a few weeks ago and helped me set up my ancient laptop. It's so old it probably runs on Steam, but he showed me how to check my email. It's amazing what those young bucks can do with technology these days. It's so kind of him, considering how much time he spends tending his roses. I made sure to smile sweetly as I said, Jerry. She froze, her eyes widening just a fraction. A flicker of something. Fear, perhaps? Good. I smiled, took another sip of my tea, and waited. She knew Jerry, bless his nosy heart, was probably the only person who knew I even owned a computer, let alone knew how to turn it on. It was a relic, a dinosaur I bought years ago and barely touched. But it served its purpose, didn't it? The silence stretched thick and heavy. The cicadas buzzed, the birds chirped, and Jerry, across the street, kept pruning. Brenda was thinking. I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. Finally, she spoke, her voice carefully neutral. Well, Helen, I just want what's best for you. I am family, after all. Think about what I've said, and if you decide that you want me to help you, just let me know. She stood up, smoothing down her skirt. I should get going. Mark's expecting me for dinner. She gave me a tight, insincere smile. Lovely seeing you, Helen. Lovely seeing you too, sweetie. Drive safe. As she walked away, I watched her, my eyes narrowed. Could I trust her? Or was she just playing me for a fool?
Lord have mercy. As soon as Brenda's shiny black Lexus disappeared down the street, I grabbed my purse, fished out my car keys, the ones with the little knitted cozy my granddaughter made me, bless her heart, and headed straight for First Atlanta Bank. Now, I know what you're thinking. Helen, why didn't you just call the bank? Honey, you know these banks. They'd sooner give you the shirt off their back than a straight answer over the phone. Plus, I needed to see their faces, gauge their reactions. Sometimes you just gotta do things the old-fashioned way. My arthritis was acting up something fierce that day. Each step from the parking lot to the bank's heavy glass doors sending a jolt of pain up my leg. Back in my day, we didn't have all these fancy automatic doors. We just pushed them open ourselves. Builds character, you know? Inside, the bank smelled like stale coffee and that weird, vaguely citrusy cleaner they use. The air conditioning was cranked up so high I felt like I was walking into a meat locker. I shuffled over to the teller line and waited my turn. Finally, a young woman with unnaturally bright blonde hair and enough makeup to sink a battleship beckoned me forward. Her name tag read Tiffany. Lord. How can I help you today, ma'am? She chirped, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness they teach them in customer service school. I need to inquire about my account, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The name is Helen Parker. Account number, I rattled off the string of numbers, the ones I still remembered by heart, even if I had to squint to see them on my statement these days. Tiffany tapped away at her keyboard for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she looked up, her expression carefully blank. And what is it you need to know, Mrs. Parker? I want to know who has access to my account and what kind of transactions have been made recently. She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room like a hummingbird on speed. "Well, Mrs. Parker, for security reasons, I can't just give out that information." "Security reasons, my foot. I am the account holder, and I want to know what's going on with my money." Tiffany sighed, the sound entirely too dramatic for a Tuesday morning. "Okay, Mrs. Parker, just a moment." She disappeared into a back room, leaving me now fuming. I could feel my blood pressure rising, and I swear I saw spots dancing in front of my eyes. She finally returned, carrying a thin file. She cleared her throat. "I can confirm that Brenda Parker is listed as having limited access to your account." My heart skipped a beat. Limited access? What does that mean? "It means she's authorized to make small transfers for household expenses," she said, avoiding my gaze. "Small transfers? How small?" I pressed, my voice rising again. "Well, they vary, Mrs. Parker, but they are all within the authorized limit." She kept tapping at her keyboard, her eyes glued to the screen. "And what exactly are these household expenses she's supposedly paying for?" I demanded. My mind raced. What could Brenda possibly be charging to my account? I handled all my own bills, my own groceries. The only thing Brenda ever did was bring over those sad little casseroles that tasted like cardboard. Tiffany's cheeks flushed a little pink. I don't have access to that level of detail, Mrs. Parker. I can only see the amounts and the dates of the transfers." "Amounts and dates, huh?" I said, my voice dangerously low. "Well, give me the amounts and the dates then, sweetie." She rattled off a list of transactions, small amounts here and there, never more than a few $100s at a time. But they added up. Over the past few months, Brenda had siphoned off a considerable sum, enough to raise serious questions. My fixed income was not for her to pilfer. As she spoke, I noticed something else. Tiffany wouldn't meet my eyes. She kept glancing nervously towards the back of the bank, her fingers fidgeting with a pen. Something wasn't right. "Is there something else you're not telling me, young lady?" I asked, my voice sharp. She jumped, startled. "No, Mrs. Parker, I've told you everything I can." But her voice wavered, and her eyes darted to the back of the bank again. She really didn't respect her elders. I stared at her, my eyes narrowed. "Are you sure about that, Tiffany? Because if I find out you're holding back on me, I'll be back here with my lawyer. And trust me, honey, you don't want that." Tiffany swallowed hard, her face pale. There's nothing else, Mrs. Parker, I swear." But I didn't believe her, not for a second. Something was going on at that bank, something Brenda was involved in, and I was determined to find out what it was. What is Brenda hiding at the bank? Lord have mercy. You think that was the end of it with that girl Tiffany at the bank? Oh, sweeties, that was just the appetizer. The main course was Brenda's little family meeting she insisted on having right in my living room a few days later. Now, my house is my sanctuary. It's where I drink my Earl Grey, tend to my hydrangeas, and watch Murder, She Wrote reruns without interruption. I don't need some young whippersnapper coming in and rearranging my furniture with her condescending attitude. Brenda, bless her heart, and I use that phrase very loosely, arrived with John in tow, looking all concerned and put together in a beige pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. She even brought a pecan pie from that fancy bakery downtown, you know, the one where they charge a $5 for a single cookie. Honestly. "John, we're a little worried about you," started Brenda, all furrowed brows and sympathetic glances. He's a good boy, my John, but sometimes he's a little slow on the uptake. He gets that from his father. God rest his soul. Worried? About what, honey? I'm perfectly fine, I said, pouring myself another cup of tea. I even added a little extra sugar just to spite Brenda. Well, Mom, you've been a little forgetful lately, Brenda chimed in, her voice dripping with fake concern.
and we just want to make sure you're okay. Maybe it's time to consider professional assistance." Professional assistance? What in the Sam Hill was she talking about? Did she think I was losing my marbles? I might be 72, but my mind is as sharp as a tack. I still balance my checkbook to the penny every month. Try that with some of these youngsters and their Zelle accounts, you know what I mean? Professional assistance, Brenda? Are you suggesting I need a nurse? Or worse, one of those homes? My voice rose an octave. The very idea! "No, Mom, nothing like that," she said quickly, her eyes darting around the room. "Just, maybe someone to help with the day-to-day stuff. Errands, appointments, paperwork." Paperwork! That was it, wasn't it? She wanted to get her hands on my finances, plain and simple. She figured if she could convince John that I was losing it, she could swoop in and take control. The audacity! That's when I decided to put my plan into action. I'd been suspicious of Brenda for a while, ever since I noticed little discrepancies in my bank statements. That's why I downloaded that voice recorder app on my iPhone a few weeks back. I know, technology isn't my strong suit. My grandson, David, showed me how to use it. He thinks it's hilarious that his old grandma is secretly recording people. As Brenda rambled on about the supposed benefits of professional assistance, I accidentally knocked over my teacup, sending a cascade of hot Earl Grey right onto her precious beige handbag. "Oh my goodness, Brenda, I am so sorry," I exclaimed, grabbing a napkin and dabbing at the stain. "Let me get some club soda. That usually works, doesn't it?" Brenda shrieked, snatching the bag away from me. "This is a Prada, Mother Parker. Club soda will ruin it." While she was distracted with her ruined handbag, I discreetly reached for my iPhone, which I had conveniently placed on the coffee table earlier. With a trembling hand, I fumbled with the screen and tapped the record button. A tiny red dot appeared in the corner. Success. I continued to fuss over Brenda, apologizing profusely while secretly praying the app was working properly. I'd tested it a few times, but I was still worried I'd messed something up. My arthritis was acting up something fierce that day, and my fingers weren't as nimble as they used to be. I mean, back in my day, we didn't have such complicated devices. We just used a good old-fashioned pen and notebook. "Don't worry, dear," I said, my voice saccharine sweet. "We'll get it cleaned. I know a good dry cleaner downtown. They're miracle workers." "It's ruined, Mother Parker, ruined," she wailed, examining the stain with a horrified expression. John just stood there, looking uncomfortable. He hated when Brenda and I argued. He always got caught in the middle. As Brenda continued to lament the fate of her handbag, I subtly placed my phone back on the coffee table, making sure the microphone was facing towards us. I took a deep breath and sat back down, trying to appear calm and innocent. But inside, my heart was pounding. I couldn't shake the feeling that Brenda suspected something. She kept giving me these sharp, knowing glances, as if she could see right through my little charade. She was definitely getting suspicious about my forgetfulness. I saw it in her eyes. Had I blown my cover?
"Lord have mercy," I muttered, pushing my reading glasses further up my nose. The Georgia sun was beating down on my porch, but I had to hear these recordings again. The cicadas were buzzing loud enough to drown out a symphony, but I needed to focus. I was perched on my favorite wicker chair, Earl Grey tea growing cold in the cup beside me, my iPhone clutched in my trembling hand. I pressed play. Brenda's voice, dripping with that fake sweetness she reserves for when she wants something, filled the air. "And that's why, Mr. Abernathy, we need to contest the will. John always meant for me to have more. Helen, well, she's got her Social Security, her little nest egg. She doesn't need the lake house." My blood ran cold. The lake house? John and I built that place with our own two hands. Every nail hammered, every shingle laid was a testament to our love. He promised I could live out my days there, watching the sun set over the water. And this viper was trying to steal it from me?
Abernathy's voice, smooth as snake oil, slithered from the phone. "Mrs. Parker, the courts generally favor the surviving spouse. We just need to prove undue influence, perhaps questionable mental capacity on the part of the deceased." Undue influence? Questionable mental capacity? The nerve! John was as sharp as a tack right up until the end. He knew exactly what he was doing when he made that will, and Brendan knew it too. The recording continued, a sickening litany of legal jargon and veiled insults disguised as concerned inquiries. They talked about trusts, estates, and probate, words that swirled around me like a dense fog. I was a whiz with numbers, always balanced my checkbook to the penny. But this legal mumbo-jumbo? It was a foreign language. "Has Helen made any unusual financial transactions lately?" Abernathy asked. "Well," Brenda purred, "she did mention donating to some online charity, something about saving the pandas. Honestly, she's getting so scatterbrained these days. Remember that time she tried to pay the cable bill with Monopoly money? Bless her heart. Damn her lying, conniving heart. The panda thing was a one-time donation to a reputable conservation organization. And the cable bill mishap? A senior moment, plain and simple. It happens. Back in my day, people respected their elders. Now they just see us as senile fools to be taken advantage of." I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to stay calm. But the rage was bubbling up inside me, a molten lava threatening to erupt. This wasn't just about the lake house. It was about Brenda's blatant disrespect, her assumption that I was too old and stupid to see what she was up to. She thought she could waltz in here, manipulate my grief, and steal my son's legacy. I listened further. Abernathy discussed strategies for discrediting me, for painting me as an incompetent old woman incapable of managing my own affairs. He even brought up the little incident with my Zelle account a couple of months ago when I accidentally sent $500 to the wrong person. A simple mistake, easily rectified, but he twisted it into evidence of my declining cognitive abilities. The damn young buck. My hands were shaking so badly now that I nearly dropped my phone. I felt a sharp pain in my knuckles. My arthritis was kicking up again. The sun felt hotter, the cicadas louder. I was trapped in this sweltering heat, listening to these two vultures pick apart my life, my son's life, for their own selfish gain. Brenda continued, her voice laced with honeyed malice. "I'm just worried about her, Mr. Abernathy. She gets so confused these days. And honestly, the house is falling apart. The siding is peeling, the roof needs repairs. She can barely manage to keep the garden weeded. It's just not safe for her to live there alone." Safe? Safe? I've lived in that house for 40 years. I know every creak in the floorboards, every rustle in the bushes. I'm safer there than I'd be anywhere else. And that garden is my pride and joy. Sure, I've slowed down a bit, but I still managed to keep it looking better than Brenda keeps her own hair. I paused the recording, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I felt helpless, overwhelmed by the legal complexities, the insidious nature of Brenda's scheme. She was using the system against me, twisting my age and my occasional lapses in memory into weapons. Damn it all to hell. I needed help. I needed someone who could understand this legal gobbledygook, someone who could fight back against Abernathy's slick maneuvering. But who? Who could I trust? I knew John's old college roommate, David, became a lawyer, but he was an ambulance chaser. No better than Abernathy, probably. The recording was a trove of information, proof of Brenda's greed and Abernathy's shady ethics, but it felt like I was holding a ticking bomb without knowing how to defuse it. How could I possibly fight back against this legal manipulation?
Well, to hell with being helpless. I was a Parker. And more than that, I was an accountant for 45 years. I balanced the books for half the small businesses in Decatur. I could spot a doctored expense report from 50 paces. Brenda might think she was playing chess with a pigeon, but she was about to find out this pigeon kept a calculator in her wing. 3 days later, my doorbell chimed. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. You could smell that sickly sweet gardenia perfume she wears right through the door. It always smelled like a funeral home to me. I opened it, putting on my best, pleasantly confused face. "Brenda, sweetie, what a surprise!" "Helen," she said, breezing past me like she owned the place, which I suppose was her grand ambition. She was holding a thick manila envelope. "I brought you some tea cakes from that little bakery you like." She placed them on the hall table next to a stack of mail. A bribe. How quaint. "And," she said, tapping the envelope, "I have that little bit of paperwork from Mr. Abernathy, just to make things easier on everyone." She ushered me into the living room, the one with the good furniture John and I bought after our 25th anniversary. She sat me down in my own wingback chair and perched on the ottoman in front of me, her knees practically touching mine, far too close. She opened the envelope and fanned out a sheaf of papers thick enough to choke a horse. "Now don't you worry your pretty little head about all this legal talk," she cooed, her voice dripping with fake concern. "It's basically the same as your old will, just updated, tidied up. Mr. Abernathy just wants to make sure everything is in order so there are no complications for you down the line." For me. Bullshit. This was about making sure there were no complications for her when she tried to liquidate my life's work. I took the papers from her, letting my hand tremble just a little. A touch of arthritis in the morning always helped the performance. "Oh my, so many words, dear." I squinted, pretending to read. My eyes scanned the pages, but my mind, my real mind, was a steel trap. I saw it immediately. The changes were subtle, woven in like poison threads. The house, previously designated to go into a trust for my grandchildren, was now left directly to Brenda. My portfolio of stocks, the one I managed myself since John passed, was to be put under her stewardship. And then I saw the clause about John's old holding company, JP Enterprises LLC. It was a boring little entity he'd set up for tax purposes back in the 90s, held a few commercial deeds. In the old will, it was to be dissolved and the assets split. In this one, full control was transferred to her. "What's this JP Enterprises thing, sweetie?" I asked, pointing with a shaky finger. "I thought John closed that down years ago." Brenda waved a dismissive hand, the diamonds on her fingers catching the light. "Oh, that's just legal boilerplate, Helen. Tidying up loose ends. You know how lawyers are." I knew all right, and I knew a land grab when I saw one. "Well," I said, my voice wavering, "I suppose I should sign it if Mr. Abernathy says so, but my goodness, the print is so small, I can't even think without my good reading glasses. I think I left them in the study." "Of course, Helen, take your time," she said, practically vibrating with anticipation. She thought she had me, the poor, confused old woman ready to sign her life away for a tea cake. I shuffled into my late husband's study, closing the door behind me. The room smelled of old books, pipe tobacco, and his Old Spice aftershave, a scent that still lingered after all these years. My computer, an old but reliable Dell, sat humming quietly on his big mahogany desk. My good reading glasses were right there next to the all-in-one printer and scanner. My hands stopped shaking the second the door clicked shut. With the speed and precision of a bookkeeper at tax time, I lifted the lid of the scanner. I laid the first page of the revised will on the glass. The machine whirred to life. One page, then the next, and the next. The whole time, I could hear Brenda humming to herself in the living room. Let her hum. I opened my email, my fingers flying across the keyboard. The night before, after hours of frantic searching online, I'd found him. A man named Mark Chen, a forensic accountant out of Chicago who specialized in elder financial abuse. His website was no nonsense, his testimonials glowing. It was a long shot, a message in a bottle tossed into the digital ocean, but it was the only shot I had. 2.
m.chen@chenforensics.com. From h.parker72@gmail.com. Subject: Consultation request, urgent. Attached is a document I have been asked to sign. I suspect fraudulent alterations designed to misappropriate assets, including from a holding company, JP Enterprises LLC. Please review. I attached the PDF file the scanner had just created. My heart hammered against my ribs. I hit send and watched the little blue bar fill. For a second, I thought my Wi-Fi would fail, that the whole plan would collapse. But then the confirmation popped up. Your message has been sent. I took a deep breath, picked up my reading glasses, and plastered the gentle, vacant smile back on my face. I walked back into the living room, the crisp, damning pages in my hand. Brenda looked up, her own smile a predatory slash. "Find them?" she asked sweetly. "Yes, dear," I said, sitting back down. I picked up the pen she'd left on the table. It felt as heavy as a lead weight. I'd sent my only flare up into the sky to a man I'd never met, hundreds of miles away. Now all I could do was stall and pray. Will the forensic accountant find something in time?
Well, Lord have mercy, I muttered, adjusting my floral scarf as Brenda steered us into the Wells Fargo parking lot. The email from Mark Chen had arrived at 5:17 a.m. I'd been up since 4, arthritis acting up something fierce, rereading the damn thing until the words blurred. Mrs. Parker, the documents indicate a clear pattern of asset misappropriation. I still clutched the printout in my purse, practically singeing a hole through the lining. You okay, Helen? You seem a little flushed, Brenda chirped, her voice laced with that sickly sweet concern I'd grown to despise. Just peachy, dear, I said, offering her what I hoped passed for a serene smile. A little morning walk will do me good. We walked into the bank, the air conditioning hitting me like a wall. The scent of stale coffee and the hum of fluorescent lights did nothing to calm my frayed nerves. I needed to confront her, now. Brenda, honey, could we step into one of those little conference rooms? I have a few questions about these accounts. I gestured vaguely toward the back. She blinked, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Of course, Helen, anything for you. We settled into a cramped room with cheap wood paneling and a small, scarred table. The silence felt thick enough to choke on. I reached into my purse and pulled out the printout from Mark Chen. Brenda, I began, my voice trembling slightly. Mr. Chen is a forensic accountant. He specializes in elder financial abuse. He reviewed the documents you had me sign. Her smile faltered just a fraction. Helen, I don't understand. What are you talking about? I pushed the printout across the table. He says there's a pattern, a systematic draining of my accounts. JP Enterprises, my savings, everything. Through transfers I never authorized. She stared at the paper, her face slowly hardening. This is ridiculous. Some accountant? You're believing some stranger over your own family? I traced transfers, Brenda. Zelle payments, withdrawals, all going to accounts you control. A little here, a little there, just enough to stay under the radar. But it adds up, doesn't it? It adds up to a fortune you're stealing from me. My voice rose, the carefully constructed facade of gentle old lady beginning to crack. Helen, you're confused. These accounts are for your care. You said you wanted me to handle your finances. Don't you remember setting up the automatic bill payments? It's all for you. Her voice was sharp, defensive. Don't you dare insult my intelligence, I spat. The sweetie, I added, dripping with venom. I may be old, but I'm not senile. I was a damn good accountant in my day. I know exactly what's going on. You thought I was a doddering old fool, ripe for the picking. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back against the wall. This is insane. I'm not going to sit here and listen to these accusations. You're having some kind of episode, Helen. Maybe we should take you to the hospital. Oh, I'm having an episode, all right, I said, standing up to face her. An episode of clarity. An episode of realizing that the woman I welcomed into my family is nothing but a greedy, conniving thief.
How can you say that to me? She cried, tears welling in her eyes. I've done nothing but care for you, cooked your meals, driven you to appointments, cleaned your house, and this is how you repay me? By accusing me of stealing from you? Cared for me? I scoffed. You cared for me while you were lining your pockets with my money. You think I didn't notice the new car, the designer handbags, the weekend getaways you suddenly started taking? On my dime, Brenda, all while I'm clipping coupons and worrying about my fixed income. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I can't believe you're doing this. You're twisting everything. You're letting some snake oil salesman fill your head with lies. You're imagining things, Helen. You need help. I need my money back, I roared, slamming my hand on the table, and I need you out of my life. I want you out of my house, out of my family, and out of my sight. She recoiled, her face a mask of wounded innocence. I'm not stealing anything from you, Helen. I swear. You're not yourself. You're delusional. Delusional? That bitch. I was far from delusional. But how could I prove it? How could I make her confess? It was my word against hers. Damn it all. Could I prove she'd been systematically draining my accounts?
Damn it all. Could I prove she'd been systematically draining my accounts? It was a question that gnawed at me for weeks, honey. Weeks filled with fake smiles and Brenda's cloying concern. She'd bring over casseroles, bland, tasteless things, mind you, and ask how I was really doing. All the while, her eyes were calculating, cold. I could practically smell the greed radiating off her like cheap perfume. Finally, I decided to gather the family. Not a big shindig, just my son, Michael, bless his oblivious heart, Brenda, of course, and my lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, a young buck but sharp as a tack. I had told Michael I wanted to discuss some revisions to my will. He was thrilled, naturally, thinking this meant he was getting a bigger piece of the pie. Little did he know. The day arrived, humid as hell, even for Atlanta in July. The air conditioner was struggling, wheezing like an old man with emphysema. The smell of Mr. Abernathy's overly sweet cologne hung heavy in the air, mixing unpleasantly with the faint aroma of Brenda's pot roast, another culinary masterpiece of blandness. All right, Mother, Michael said, all eager, beady eyes. What did you want to discuss? Brenda sat beside him, her hands clasped in her lap, a picture of innocent concern. Yes, Helen, she said sweetly, the word dripping with honeyed poison. We're all here to support you. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the frantic hummingbird that had taken up residence in my chest. Mr. Abernathy, I said, nodding towards my lawyer, would you please present the revised will? Brenda beamed. She knew. Oh, she knew she had me. She had spent weeks whispering in my ear, manipulating me, playing on my fears and insecurities. She'd convinced me, or so she thought, to leave everything to her with the promise that she would take care of Michael. The audacity of that woman! Mr. Abernathy cleared his throat and produced a crisp, official-looking document. He began to read aloud the details, the legal jargon washing over me like a tidal wave. But I wasn't listening to the words. I was watching Brenda, her smug little smile, the subtle glint of triumph in her eyes. She was picturing herself already, spending my money, living the high life, free from the burden of caring for her sweet old mother-in-law. When Mr. Abernathy finished, there was a moment of silence. Michael looked confused, glancing from Brenda to me. Mom, I don't understand, he stammered. This leaves everything to Brenda. Why? Brenda laid a manicured hand on his arm. Sweetie, she said, her voice dripping with condescension, your mother trusts me to manage her affairs. I'll make sure you're taken care of. I couldn't take it anymore. The charade, the lies, the blatant disrespect. Enough, I barked, slamming my hand on the table again. My arthritis flared up, sending a jolt of pain through my wrist, but I ignored it. I have something to say. Brenda chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent shivers down my spine. Oh, Helen, she said, shaking her head, are you going to start with these crazy accusations again? Really?
"Accusations?" I said, my voice rising. "These aren't accusations, Brenda. These are facts. Facts I can prove." Her color drained from her face. Her eyes widened and her mouth dropped open. For a moment, she was speechless. Michael gasped, looking from me to Brenda in stunned disbelief. Mr. Abernathy, bless his heart, looked like he was about to have a stroke. Then Brenda started to laugh, a loud, forced, hysterical laugh. "Recordings?" she choked out. "You think you can record me? That's ridiculous, Helen. You're losing it. You really are." She composed herself, smoothing down her designer dress, her eyes now narrowed and hard. "Besides," she said, her voice dripping with venom, "even if you did have recordings, which I highly doubt, they wouldn't be admissible in court. I had this house swept for bugs weeks ago. Found nothing, sweetie. Absolutely nothing." She leaned back in her chair, a smug look returning to her face. "So go ahead, Helen. Play your little games. It won't change anything. The will is signed. It's legal, and there's nothing you can do about it." Was she right? Had I been outsmarted? Had I put all my faith in a plan that had already been defeated? God, I felt faint. The room was spinning. Was this it? Was she going to get away with it all?
Lord, give me strength. Was she right? Had I become that doddering old woman they all thought I was? I could feel the blood draining from my face, my hands clammy. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would burst right out of my chest. This young whippersnapper, this vampire, had she really outsmarted me after all my years of meticulous bookkeeping, all my carefully laid plans? "Oh, I wouldn't be so sure about that, Brenda," I managed to say, my voice shaking only a little. "See, honey, you underestimated two things. One, my old bones might creak, but my mind is still sharper than a tack. And two, you seriously underestimate this ancient laptop of mine." I reached over to the side table, grabbed the blessed machine, and turned it to face everyone. It was my old Dell, the one I used to balance my checkbook, pay bills, and keep up with my silly online bridge games. Nothing fancy, believe me, but it had one feature Brenda hadn't accounted for, a built-in webcam. "You see, Brenda," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "I might be old-fashioned, but I learned a thing or two about technology over the years, especially when it comes to protecting myself." I clicked a few buttons and the screen flickered to life. A video started playing. There was Brenda, sitting at what looked like her lawyer's office, the same one who drew up that god-awful will. She was talking, whispering really, her voice full of that sugary sweetness she reserved just for me. "So, you're absolutely sure this will bypass any challenge from Helen? She's getting increasingly suspicious and, frankly, she's starting to annoy me." Brenda's voice hissed from the speakers. The lawyer, a greasy-looking fellow with a snake oil salesman smile, nodded. "Absolutely, Mrs. Abernathy. Once she signs, there's nothing she can do, and with Mr. Abernathy's declining health, it's only a matter of time." Brenda laughed, a cold, calculating sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Excellent! I'll make sure she's comfortable, and then, well, the world is my oyster, isn't it?" Michael gasped, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. He stared at the laptop screen, then at Brenda, then back at the screen again. Mr. Abernathy looked like he was trying to process everything, his brow furrowed in confusion. "I recorded that call a few weeks ago, Brenda. You were so busy plotting and scheming, you didn't even notice the little green light on my laptop. You thought I was just playing solitaire, didn't you, sweetie? You thought I was too senile to understand what was going on." The color drained from her face. Her mouth worked, but no sound came out. She looked like a deer caught in headlights. The smugness, the venom, the confidence, it was all gone, replaced by sheer, unadulterated panic. It was glorious. For a moment, I allowed myself to savor the victory. I had her. I had proof.
I had saved my son, my home, my husband's legacy. I was about to expose her for the manipulative, greedy monster she truly was. But then, Brenda found her voice, and what she said next shattered my world all over again. That's cute, Helen," she said, her voice regaining a chilling composure. "Really, but it's all rather irrelevant, wouldn't you say?" She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a crisp, official-looking document. I saw the words "Offshore Trust" emblazoned across the top. My blood ran cold. "Years ago, Helen," she continued, her voice dripping with satisfaction, "you, in your infinite wisdom, transferred all your assets, your house, your savings, everything, into an offshore trust. Remember? You said you were setting things up for tax purposes. You signed all the papers yourself." She tossed the document on the table. "The will, my dear, is irrelevant. You own nothing. Therefore, you have nothing to leave to Michael. And therefore, I've done nothing illegal." I stared at the document, my mind reeling. The offshore trust? I remember vaguely signing some papers, something about estate planning. My late husband had always handled those things. I trusted him implicitly. Had he? No, he wouldn't. But could it be? Had I unknowingly signed away everything? Had I been such a fool? My legs felt weak, and I sank back into my chair, the fight draining out of me. The room was spinning again, but this time it wasn't just the shock. It was the crushing weight of defeat. Brenda smiled, a genuine, triumphant smile this time. "So, Helen, how does it feel to be outsmarted? To be left with absolutely nothing?" Had she won? Had she taken everything? Was I truly powerless?
Oh, sugar, I breathed, more to myself than anyone else. The courtroom felt like it was shrinking, the air thick with Brenda's smug perfume, something cloyingly sweet like gardenias past their prime. I clutched my purse tighter, the worn leather familiar and comforting against my trembling hands. It was a vintage Coach bag, a far cry from Brenda's designer stuff, but it had seen me through thick and thin. Back when Michael was a boy, I'd carried his crayons and juice boxes in it. Now it held the remnants of a life, maybe a life about to be snatched away. The lawyer, a young buck with a slicked-back haircut and an expensive suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, was droning on about irrevocable trusts and legal precedent. His voice was like nails on a chalkboard, each word a hammer blow to my already fragile hope. "As you can see, Your Honor," he drawled, gesturing towards the document, "Mrs. Parker willingly and knowingly transferred all her assets into this trust years ago. She is, for all intents and purposes, penniless. The will presented by the plaintiff is therefore moot." I risked a glance at Michael. His face was a mask of confusion and disbelief. He looked like a little boy again, lost and scared. My heart ached for him. I'd wanted to provide for him, to secure his future. Now it seemed I'd only managed to make things worse. Brenda caught my eye and offered a sickeningly sweet smile. "Don't worry, Helen," she cooed, her voice dripping with false concern. "We wouldn't want you ending up on the streets, now would we?" The gall of that woman. I wanted to slap that smile right off her face. But I was frozen, paralyzed by the sheer audacity of it all. Had I really been so blind, so trusting? Had I unknowingly signed away my entire life? The offshore trust? I remembered vague conversations with my late husband, George. He'd always handled the finances. I remember him talking about estate planning, about minimizing taxes. I'd signed whatever he put in front of me, trusting him implicitly. He was a good man, a hard-working man,
He wouldn't have intentionally screwed me over, would he? Doubt gnawed at me. Maybe he thought he was doing the right thing. Maybe he'd been misled by some snake oil salesman promising him the moon. Back in those days, financial advisors were thick as thieves, all promising you riches if you just handed over your checkbook. The judge, a stern-looking woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, cleared her throat. "Mrs. Parker," she said, her voice sharp and commanding, "do you have anything to say in your defense?" My mind was a blank. What could I say? How could I possibly refute the seemingly ironclad evidence Brenda had presented? I felt like a fool, an old woman out of her depth being played like a fiddle by a younger, savvier opponent. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My throat was dry, my voice lost somewhere in the swirling vortex of my despair. All I could manage was a weak, pathetic shake of my head. Brenda caught my eye and offered a sickeningly sweet smile. She thought she had won. She thought she had outsmarted me, left me with nothing. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just an old fool who deserved what was coming to her. The image of that damn document, the words "offshore trust" emblazoned across the top, swam before my eyes. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the feeling of utter helplessness. Then something clicked. A tiny, almost imperceptible flicker of defiance ignited within me. It was a spark, barely enough to keep a candle burning, but it was there. Damn it, I thought. I wasn't going down without a fight. Brenda might think she had all the answers, but she was wrong. She made one crucial mistake. She underestimated me. She thought I was a senile old woman, easily manipulated and discarded, but I had a few tricks up my sleeve, a few secrets she didn't know about. I slowly opened my eyes, my gaze hardening. I looked directly at Brenda, meeting her triumphant stare with a newfound resolve. Let her enjoy her victory for now. She had no idea what was coming. She might have thought she had found some fancy legal loophole, but Brenda underestimated the power of a stubborn woman with a lifetime of experience and a few well-placed recordings on her iPhone. But it all came down to one simple question. Did that damn trust really cover everything?
"Well, butter my biscuits," I muttered, loud enough for the lady next to me, bless her heart, to give me a sympathetic pat on the arm. We were in court, honey, and it felt like a damn circus. A circus run by a bunch of snake oil salesmen in pinstripe suits. Brenda's lawyer, that young buck with the slick back hair and a smile that could curdle milk, was in full swing. "Your Honor," he droned, his voice echoing through the courtroom, "as we've clearly demonstrated, the deceased's assets are entirely encompassed within the established offshore trust. Mrs. Parker, my client, is the sole beneficiary of said trust. Therefore, any claims contesting the will are, frankly, without merit." He gestured dramatically towards Brenda, who was sitting beside him, looking every inch the grieving widow, although I hadn't seen a single tear. She was wearing a dark, expensive-looking suit, probably bought with my money. The nerve of that woman. "Furthermore," the lawyer continued, puffing out his chest like a prize pigeon, "Mrs. Helen Parker, while undoubtedly a woman of experience, possesses no legal claim to the estate. Her accusations are based on unsubstantiated allegations and, frankly, amount to nothing more than the ramblings of an elderly woman struggling to come to terms with her loss." The ramblings of an elderly woman. Oh, he did not just say that. My arthritis was acting up and the air conditioning in the courthouse was making my bones ache, but that comment alone was enough to send a jolt of pure, unadulterated rage through me. I gripped my purse tighter. Inside, Nestled amongst my Earl Grey tea bags and my AARP card was my trusty iPhone. And on that iPhone were hours and hours of recorded conversations. Conversations that Brenda thought were private. Conversations where she revealed her true, greedy, scheming self. The judge, a weary-looking man with a receding hairline and a permanent frown, leaned forward, peering over his spectacles. "Mrs. Parker," he said, his voice laced with a hint of impatience, "do you have any further evidence to present? We've been at this for hours, and frankly, the documentation presented by the defense appears conclusive." Conclusive? My blood pressure spiked. My own lawyer, bless his heart, but he was about as useful as a screen door on a submarine, just sat there, looking defeated. He'd warned me it was an uphill battle, that offshore trusts were notoriously difficult to crack. But damn it, I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Not when so much was at stake. Not when my son's memory, his legacy, was being trampled underfoot by this vulture. I opened my mouth to speak, to plead, to scream, but the words caught in my throat. I felt a familiar wave of despair wash over me. Was this it? Was I really going to lose everything? Was Brenda going to get away with stealing my son's hard-earned money? Then I saw it, a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker of smugness on Brenda's face, a triumphant little smile that told me everything I needed to know. She thought she had won. She thought she was untouchable. And that, sweetie, was her biggest mistake. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "Your Honor," I said, my voice trembling slightly but laced with a newfound steel, "I understand that the defense has presented a compelling case, and I appreciate the court's time. However, I do believe there's one crucial piece of information that hasn't been fully explored." Brenda's smile faltered just for a split second. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, maybe fear, or was that just wishful thinking on my part? "And what might that be, Mrs. Parker?" the judge asked, his tone skeptical. I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. I needed to choose my words carefully. This was it. This was my last chance. "The defense claims this trust covers all of my son's assets," I said, my gaze fixed on Brenda. "But I have reason to believe that's not entirely accurate." I could feel Brenda's eyes burning into me like laser beams. I ignored her. I focused on the judge, on the courtroom, on the task at hand. "You see, Your Honor, my son, God rest his soul, was a meticulous man. He kept detailed records of everything. And while he did indeed create an offshore trust, I have reason to believe that certain transactions were made outside of that trust in the months prior to his death. Transactions that Mrs. Parker may not be aware of." I saw the young buck lawyer shift uncomfortably. Brenda's face was now a mask of carefully controlled anger. She knew. She knew that I knew something. "I believe these transactions may shed some light on the true extent of my son's assets, and I have evidence to support my claims." The judge leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What kind of evidence, Mrs. Parker?" I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that I knew would unnerve Brenda. "Let's just say, Your Honor, that I've been doing a little accounting of my own, and I think you'll find the results quite interesting." I paused again, letting my words sink in. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Everyone was waiting, holding their breath. Even the court reporter seemed to be leaning forward, her fingers poised over her stenotype machine. Then Brenda, unable to contain herself any longer, finally spoke. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the tremor of panic beneath the surface. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "These are just baseless accusations. Your Honor, I object. This woman is grasping at straws." The young buck lawyer jumped to his feet, sputtering about hearsay and lack of evidence. The judge banged his gavel, demanding order, but I didn't care. I had them right where I wanted them. Because there was that damn trust document that the smart lawyer was flaunting, but did that damn trust really cover everything?
Well, bless her heart. Baseless accusations? Honey, if she thought that, she had another thing coming. And the judge, bless his soul, was clearly growing weary of her theatrics. He was about to rule on that damn trust. I could feel it in my bones, that knot of arthritis in my left knee screaming louder than Brenda's lawyer. He cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the suddenly still courtroom. "Mrs. Parker," he began, his voice measured, "while I appreciate your enthusiasm, I must remind you that the burden of proof lies with you. This trust document appears to be quite comprehensive. Unless you have something concrete to present, I'm inclined to rule in favor of the plaintiff." Brenda shot me a smug little smile, the kind of smile that said, "You old fool, you thought you could outsmart me? Oh, sweetie, you have no idea." I opened my mouth to speak, ready to unleash my accounting, when I saw it. A court officer, one of those young fellows barely out of law school himself, was hurrying towards the bench. He was holding a folded piece of paper, looking flustered. He whispered something to the judge, who took the note, unfolded it, and read it. The judge's eyebrows shot up. He looked from the note to Brenda, then to me, his expression unreadable. He paused, a long, pregnant pause that stretched into an eternity. Brenda, of course, assumed it was a delay tactic. "Your Honor," she said, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness, "surely we're not going to allow this interruption to derail these proceedings. This woman is simply trying to muddy the waters." The young buck lawyer, smelling victory, chimed in, "Yes, Your Honor, we've been more than patient. We request that you render your judgment immediately." I just sat there, a small smile playing on my lips, watching their carefully constructed facade begin to crumble. The scent of Brenda's expensive perfume, something floral and cloying, suddenly seemed overpowering. It was the smell of desperation. The judge finally looked up, his face now a mask of something I couldn't quite decipher. It wasn't anger, not quite, more like surprise and maybe, just maybe, a hint of intrigue. "Mr. Thompson," he said, addressing Brenda's lawyer, "I understand your eagerness, but I think we need to take a brief recess. Mrs. Parker, I would like to see you in my chambers. And Mrs. Thompson, you and your counsel are welcome to join us." Brenda's face went white. She opened her mouth to protest, but the judge cut her off with a sharp look. "That will be all, Mrs. Thompson." As the court officer led us towards the judge's chambers, I could feel Brenda's eyes burning into the back of my head. I almost laughed. Almost. But I needed to stay focused. This wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. Inside the judge's chambers, the air was thick with tension. The judge gestured for us to sit, but no one moved. He remained standing behind his large oak desk, the note still clutched in his hand. "Mrs. Parker," he began, his voice low, "this information, it's quite disturbing. Are you aware of the implications of what you're suggesting?" "Your Honor," I said calmly, "I wouldn't bring it to your attention if I wasn't absolutely certain. My son may be gone, but his legacy deserves to be protected, and I won't stand by and watch someone try to steal what rightfully belongs to his children." Brenda finally found her voice. "This is outrageous. What is going on? What does that note say?" The judge ignored her. He turned to me, his eyes searching. "This alleged offshore account, you have proof of this?" "I have documentation," I said, pulling a small, slim USB drive from my purse. "I've even included a transcript of several conversations that I believe are relevant." The young buck lawyer sputtered. "Your Honor, this is completely inadmissible. This woman is clearly fabricating evidence." "Oh, honey," I said, turning to Brenda, my voice dripping with mock sympathy. "You really shouldn't underestimate an old woman with a fixed income and a lot of time on her hands.
especially one who knows how to use a damn iPhone. You see, I made a habit of recording all of our little chats, sweetie, just to keep things straight, you understand. My memory isn't what it used to be, you know? Brenda's face contorted with rage. You bitch! You were recording me? Well, I never, I said, feigning shock. Such language! Is that any way to talk to your elder? Back in my day, we respected our elders. Apparently they don't teach you anything about manners anymore. Maybe you should have been paying attention to the phantom factor instead of your investments. The judge held up his hand, silencing us both. Enough. I think we need to bring in the authorities. Mrs. Thompson, I advise you to consult with your attorney. This could get very ugly very quickly. He turned to the court officer who was standing nervously by the door. Please call the district attorney and get someone to secure that USB drive. We need to verify the contents immediately. As the court officer hurried out of the room, I looked at Brenda. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling around her. The mask of composure had finally shattered, revealing the cold, calculating woman beneath. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt a sense of peace. Justice was finally within reach. But I couldn't help but wonder what exactly was written on that note that caused the judge to pause.
Well, butter my biscuits, I muttered, watching Brenda's face. Justice, honey, that's what that look was. The kind of justice that feels like a warm cup of Earl Grey on a cold winter morning. The judge cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the suddenly silent courtroom. Is Mr. Jerry Thompson present? He asked, his voice firm. Mr. Jerry Thompson, resident of 14 Oak Street. My heart skipped a beat. Jerry Thompson, that nosy old coot who lived across the street? What in the world did he have to do with any of this? A shuffling sound came from the back of the room. A balding man with a nervous twitch, wearing a plaid shirt that was at least 2 sizes too big, hesitantly stood up. It was Jerry, all right. Always peering through his curtains, that one. I swear he knew more about my comings and goings than I did myself. Yes, Your Honor, Jerry stammered, adjusting his glasses. That's me. Brenda rolled her eyes, the gesture so dramatic it could have starred in a silent film. Oh, for crying out loud, she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. What is this? Some kind of neighborhood watch meeting? This has nothing to do with anything. I shot her a look that could curdle milk. Everything is connected, sweetie, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You should know that by now, especially when someone is investing in your backyard. It's important to know who your neighbors are. You should have been paying attention to the phantom factor instead of your investments. The judge ignored Brenda's outburst. Mr. Thompson, he said, his gaze steady on the nervous man, please approach the stand. Jerry shuffled forward, looking like a deer caught in headlights. He swore as his arthritic knee buckled for a moment, but he caught himself on the edge of one of the benches. He took the stand and was sworn in. Mr. Thompson, the judge continued, can you please tell the court what you observed on the evening of July 14th of this year? Brenda scoffed. Objection, Your Honor. This is irrelevant. Mr. Thompson is a known busybody with a history of making unsubstantiated claims. Overruled, the judge said without even looking at her. Mr. Thompson, please proceed. Jerry cleared his throat again, adjusting his glasses. Well, Your Honor, I saw Miss Brenda Thompson digging in Mrs. Parker's garden late at night, around 11 o'clock, I reckon. Brenda's face turned an alarming shade of red. That's a lie! I was at a charity gala that night. I have witnesses. Now, Miss Thompson, the judge said, raising his hand. Let Mr. Thompson speak. Jerry continued, gaining confidence as he spoke. I saw her, clear as day. She had a flashlight and a shovel. She was digging near the rose bushes. Then she put something in the hole and covered it up. And what exactly did she put in the hole, Mr. Thompson? The judge asked, his voice measured. He hesitated, his eyes darting nervously towards Brenda. It looked like
like a small box, Your Honor. A metal box, maybe. My mind raced. A metal box? What in the world was she bearing in my garden? I thought about the phantom factor, the way the soil had been turned over. It was all starting to make sense. Brenda was practically spitting with rage. This is ridiculous. He's making this up. He's got it in for me because I complained about his overgrown lawn. Mr. Thompson, the judge said, ignoring Brenda's outburst, did you take any action after witnessing this? Jerry swallowed hard. Yes, Your Honor. I took pictures with my phone. I thought it was suspicious, so I took pictures. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, a battered old flip phone that looked like it belonged in a museum. He fumbled with it for a moment, then held it out to the court officer. I don't know how to send them, he stammered. The court officer took the phone and handed it to the judge. The judge examined the phone for a moment, then nodded. These appear to be photographs, Mr. Thompson, and they appear to corroborate your testimony. They show Miss Thompson digging in Mrs. Parker's garden on the night in question. Brenda slumped in her chair, her face ashen. The fight seemed to have drained out of her. She looked defeated, lost, but I knew better to underestimate her. She was a cornered animal, and cornered animals are dangerous. Your Honor, she said, her voice barely a whisper, I can explain. I'm sure you can, Miss Thompson, the judge said, his voice cold, but I think it's time we heard from the district attorney, and perhaps the police. I believe there's more to this story than meets the eye. He paused, looking directly at me. Mrs. Parker, he said, did you by any chance know what Miss Thompson was burying in your garden? I hesitated for a moment, savoring the look of panic on Brenda's face. No, Your Honor, I said, my voice steady. I had absolutely no idea, but I have a feeling we're about to find out, and I can't wait. My eyes narrowed as I looked at Jerry. Why would Brenda need to bury anything? What does Jerry have to do with the case?
Well, bless his heart, I muttered under my breath, watching Jerry squirm under my gaze. I honestly couldn't figure out what part he had to play in this mess. Then Jerry cleared his throat, looking everywhere but at Brenda. Your Honor, he began, his voice surprisingly firm. If I may, I have evidence that might be relevant. Brenda shot him a look that could curdle milk, but Jerry just ignored her. He turned to the judge, a nervous energy radiating off him. I work in IT, Your Honor, for a company that handles cloud storage and data security. I sometimes help my sister, Brenda, with her computer issues. A collective murmur rippled through the courtroom. This was getting interesting. Please continue, Mr. Thompson, the judge said, leaning forward. I swallowed hard. A few weeks ago, Brenda called me, said she was having trouble with her laptop, said it was running slow. So I remotely accessed it to do some maintenance, run a scan, clear out the junk files, standard stuff. I use TeamViewer. It works like a charm. He paused, fiddling with his tie. While I was in there, I saw something disturbing. My heart skipped a beat. What had he seen? I saw Brenda on a video call with a lawyer. They were discussing strategies, ways to discredit Mrs. Parker and gain control of her assets. Brenda gasped, her face turning a shade of red I had thought possible. You wouldn't, she hissed. He would, sweetie, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. Looks like your little brother has finally grown a spine. Jerry ignored Brenda's outburst. I took screenshots, Your Honor, and I have the activity log from my cloud storage account showing when I accessed Brenda's computer.
I even have the IP address of the lawyer she was talking to." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a neatly organized folder. He handed it to the court officer, who passed it to the judge. The judge examined the documents carefully, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Thompson," he said finally, "are you prepared to swear under oath that these screenshots and activity logs are authentic and have not been tampered with in any way?" "Yes, Your Honor," Jerry said without hesitation. "I am." The judge turned to Brenda, his eyes narrowed. "Miss Thompson, do you deny that you had a video call with the lawyer discussing ways to manipulate Mrs. Parker?" Brenda opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She just stared at Jerry, her face a mask of disbelief and betrayal. It's not what it looks like." "Oh, honey, it's exactly what it looks like," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You thought you could pull a fast one on me, didn't you? You thought I was just some old, addled woman on a fixed income. Well, guess what? This old woman still has a few tricks up her sleeve." The judge cleared his throat, silencing the murmurs in the courtroom. "In light of this new evidence, I am reversing my previous decision," he announced. "The petition for guardianship is denied. Mrs. Parker retains full control of her assets and her life." A wave of relief washed over me, so strong it almost knocked me off my feet. I had won. I had actually won. I looked over at Brenda, who was now slumped in her chair, her face buried in her hands. She was defeated, humiliated, but I felt no sympathy for her. She had brought this on herself. Jerry, bless his awkward soul, gave me a small, hesitant smile. I winked at him, then turned my attention back to the judge. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "based on the evidence presented by Mr. Thompson, it appears that Miss Thompson may have engaged in fraudulent and potentially criminal behavior. I am referring this matter to the district attorney for further investigation." Brenda lifted her head, her eyes wide with terror. "No, you can't do that," she cried. "Oh, but I can, Miss Thompson, and I will. This court will not tolerate attempts to defraud and manipulate vulnerable members of our community." He turned to the bailiff. "Please escort Miss Thompson from the courtroom." As the bailiff led Brenda away, kicking and screaming, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. She had thought she could get away with it. She had thought she was smarter than me. But she was wrong. So wrong. She underestimated an old lady who still knew how to use a checkbook, understood compound interest, and could work an iPhone better than most whippersnappers. I felt lighter than I had in months. The weight of Brenda's greed and deceit had been lifted from my shoulders. I was free. But one question still lingered in my mind, nagging at me like a persistent cough. What had Brenda been burying in my garden that night? And will she face justice?
Well, that was a show, wasn't it, honeys? I walked out of that courtroom feeling like I'd shed 10 years. Jerry, bless his heart, was practically skipping. He kept patting my arm and mumbling, "Thank you, Mom, thank you," as if I'd done anything special other than protect my family from a gold-digging viper. The drive back to my little bungalow felt different somehow. The Atlanta sunshine seemed brighter, the azaleas more vibrant. Back home, I brewed myself a pot of Earl Grey, the good stuff from Harrods that my son used to bring me when he traveled. The aroma filled the kitchen, chasing away the last lingering scent of Brenda's cheap perfume and deceit. I settled onto the porch swing, the familiar creak a welcome sound. Across the street, I watched Jerry mowing his lawn, pushing the old Toro back and forth with surprising energy. He looked lighter, too. The weight of his marriage finally lifted. I swear he even managed a little two-step as he turned the mower around. That's when I saw it.
a little glint of metal near the rose bushes. Damn it, I muttered to myself. Brenda's mess. I finished my tea, the warm liquid soothing my nerves. Then I went inside, grabbed my gardening gloves and a trowel. As soon as I stepped onto the lawn, I felt a twinge in my lower back. Arthritis, I grumbled, always has to make an appearance. The glint turned out to be a small, tarnished silver locket. I brushed off the dirt, my fingers fumbling with the clasp. Inside, there were 2 tiny photos. One was of my late son, Michael, looking handsome and carefree, a wide grin on his face. The other was a woman I'd never seen before. She was beautiful, with dark hair and striking green eyes. She wore a simple silver pendant around her neck. Familiar. I recognized it. The pendant was a gift I had given to Michael years ago when he graduated from GA Tech. He always cherished it, so why was this woman wearing it? A chill ran down my spine, despite the warm sunshine. This wasn't just about Brenda trying to swindle me out of my savings. This felt bigger. I went back inside, my mind racing. I needed to do some digging. I hadn't touched my old laptop in months. Back in my day, we did all our accounting with ledger books and adding machines. My son convinced me to get a computer, taught me email, and I even begrudgingly learned how to use Zelle, though I still preferred writing checks from my Wells Fargo account. Dusting off the laptop, I plugged it in and waited impatiently for it to boot up. It was ancient by today's standards, probably running Windows 98 for all I knew, but it still worked. Once it was ready, I hesitantly clicked on the email icon, mostly spam, Nigerian princes and offers for miracle cures. Snake oil salesman, I thought. And then I saw it. An email, dated yesterday, with no subject line. It was from an anonymous address, shadowslinger82@untraceable.com. My heart pounded in my chest. Who would be contacting me this way? I clicked on it. The message was short, cryptic. The Thompson case is closed, but the Michael Thompson file remains open. Follow the money. They think you know nothing. They are wrong. Be careful, Helen. Follow the money? What money? Michael's business was always a bit of a mystery to me. He was involved in some kind of import-export thing, he said, but he never really talked about the details. I just assumed it was above my head. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. They? Who were they? And what did they think I knew? I glanced out the window. Jerry was still mowing, oblivious to the turmoil brewing inside me. I suddenly felt very vulnerable, very alone. As I stared at the screen, I remembered something else Brenda had been burying that night. Not just that locket, but a small metallic box. I hadn't paid much attention to it at the time, too preoccupied with her lies. I have never had a good night's sleep since that night, and I never will. The phone rang, jolting me back to reality. It was Jerry. "Mom, I'm done with the lawn. Want to come over for dinner? I'm making your favorite pot roast." "Oh, sweetie, that's so thoughtful," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "But I have a headache. I think I'll just stay in tonight." "Are you sure, Mom? You sounded a little strange." "I'm fine, Jerry. Just a little tired." After I hung up, I closed the laptop and locked it in my bedroom closet. My mind was racing. I needed to figure out what was going on, but I couldn't involve Jerry. He had been through enough. I poured myself another cup of Earl Grey. The tea was cold now, bitter, just like the secrets that were starting to surface. What had Michael been involved in? What secrets did my son take to the grave?